Alrighty, let's get this show on the road. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Hello, hello. Let's get the intro music going. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Sorry, folks, the music doesn't like me. Here we go. Take 2. 3, 2, 1.
You are now listening to Doublejump Radio.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 52 of Doublejump Radio, the official podcast of doublejump.co. I'm your host Abir and I'm joined once again by my co-host John. John, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Got uneventful week, I guess. Not too much to talk about. Oh, I did play Final Fantasy VII, which I'll talk about towards the end, I think. But otherwise, kind of chill week, I guess. How about you?
Yeah. I've been it's been kind of chill. Just trying to catch up on work and wedding planning and everything. Managed to play a little bit more of Destiny 2, doing the ever difficult legendary campaign, and I'm getting my ass kicked on this one level. I swear I've tried it like 20 times at least. So I know I'm gonna beat it. I got like literally I was a one hit off killing the boss, and then I just died, and I'm like, ugh. And then I was just like, oh, this must be what Souls people feel like, but their games actually should be very hard.
Yeah.
But
is legendary meant to be kind of like?
I guess it is.
How hard is it meant to be?
I think it is meant to be like super challenging. So I guess it's like truth in advertising, I guess, because the Halo legendary campaigns have traditionally been really, really hard, especially Halo 2's campaign. So maybe it makes sense that this would be very difficult as well. But kudos to Bungie, because it's really made me think about my loadouts and things that I don't really think about unless I'm, say, in a raid or like a really high level activity like that. So this is a good change. But John, I understand that your two cats have been donned some cones to protect them.
Yeah, they both got spayed.
Yep. Good on you. Responsible ownership.
Yeah. But one's a female, one's a male. So Ash has been fine. Like he's basically been completely, like, he's a very calm cat regardless, but he's like just completely unaffected aside from the fact that he has to wear a cone for a couple of weeks. And then Ash, like Zoe, she's the female, so she had like a more like invasive procedure, like surgery.
Yeah,
to get it
it's
done.
more
So
involved for females.
Yeah, so she's scarier in terms of like just kind of making sure her tummy is healing and stuff like that.
And that you probably had the same thing where, like, I've got two, like a brother and sister cat, is that you got to make sure that the boy cat doesn't like go to, because they kind of like lick each other and like kind of help each other. So you got to, that's why they both got the cones. And I wonder what'll happen like in the future. I hope none of your cats have to do this, but like when either of my cats have had to have the cone by themselves because they've hurt themselves or had to have a tooth removed or something, like the other cat is like, ugh, get away from me, you freak.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I hope you don't have to do that, but I wonder if like your cats will be the same.
Hopefully it doesn't come up, because they're like very much inside cats, so hopefully that, because like our last cat Leo got hurt a lot, but he was like by himself for most of his life. So it's,
and was he outside a lot?
Yeah, and he got hurt a lot. He wasn't a very cunning cat, or I don't know. Ash is very similar, which makes me thankful that he's staying inside.
He's staying inside. Yep. Fair enough. Well, let's move on to the first part of the show where we talk about the articles that went up on Doublejump last week, and I guess this week in this case, John, you delivered us another installment in our, I guess, popular Rewind series where we take a look back at games from yesteryear. This time you had a look at Kingsway, which was released in 2017, but then got a surprise free update called Ascended in last year. Tell us a little bit about what this game is about.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. I guess it counts as a rewind now because it's a few months old, like
Yeah.
the update itself. But it's yeah. So Kingsway is I guess I'd qualify it more as a roguelike, even though I don't think it's technically one. But it's like yeah, it's like the whole gimmick is that you're playing like a very stereotypical generic fantasy RPG, except everything is Windows 95 with the blocky windows and all the discomfort that comes
Everything you
with
could think
using
of.
an old version of Windows. It's much simpler. Like I think I love the gimmick a lot, but I kind of run through it. Like it ends up being I'm more about trying to explain what the game is more than try to offer an opinion on it, particularly,
Yeah.
especially, I mean. But I don't know, it's fascinating that someone made it. Like I love that it exists.
Yeah.
I and also I'm pretty sure I cheesed a lot of it like, during my runs through it because you
That's
die
all right.
very easily.
Yeah.
But then there was this one attribute or like perk or skill or something. I don't remember what they're called now. Where your attacks get because your attacks are like a loading bar in the game. So you attack and then you load, and then the attack happens when that load is finished. And then there's a perk that means that attacks become faster every time you hit. So eventually, like especially like further into the game, once you get that perk, you're just like melting fools like all the time. Like
It's good as a power fantasy.
a little bit. I don't know. It's mostly like it feels almost like a survival game because it's like it's all about collecting resources, making sure you're strong, making the right decisions to ensure you're kind of going the correct direction in how you like build your character. Like it's not really like like I mentioned it as well. It's like almost no like actual role playing in the game, even though it's technically I think billed as a role playing game.
Yeah.
But it's so it ends up feeling mostly like a kind of a roguelike built on the bones of like a Fallout style computer RPG where it's like, it's very menu heavy, lots of number crunching and lots of moving between points on a map.
I guess I've got screenshots up from your article on screen, but for folks who are listening on audio, picture like what you think about Windows 95, and basically you got the Windows 95 desktop, and you got the grey bars, the grey windows, and everything, and it's the game's UI is basically split up into different apps that pop up, and you have to kind of manage all of that screen real estate. And I guess the battles themselves are like internet pop-ups that can interrupt you. They're like kind of the random encounters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they're like annoying internet pop-ups, which is actually the part I really wasn't all that jazzed about when I played it. I was actually expecting to be like fully turn-based, all about just dealing with menus in a very like
which is enough to handle on its own
way. Well, it's kind of like as a game, it's actually not that complex. Like there isn't that much in it, which is appropriate because it's like $15 or something. Like it's really cheap. So it's kind of it's priced appropriately.
Yeah,
if that's a concern for anyone wanting to play it. But it's what was I saying? It's there isn't like too much in it. Like you end up experiencing a lot of what it has pretty quickly. At least as far as I could tell, I'm pretty sure I played through like pretty much all the content, even though I did cheese it most of the time. Like, I don't think I played it very fairly. But it's not sure there's what else was there to go?
Well, that's the thing. Like you found that it had a lot. It seems like it had a lot going based on like kind of the 90s OS style gimmick, but it seemed like the things that were added to it, like the pop-up battles and like kind of the I don't know, or like that it kind of leaned into it more, that it had a bit more like, I guess the way you put it, charm, to kind of make it, I guess, stand out. It seems like if there was more of that, it would have been a much better experience.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost like a proof of concept of kind of the gimmick, It's like Windows 95 plus classic computer RPG. Always, for some reason, I had it drilled in my head that I meant classic RPG, like CRPG. I had to look it up when I was writing.
I guess in the modern context, it probably is a classic RPG. Like, I mean, if it's meant to look like, because it does also have like a lot of text and things like that that those RPGs of that era had. You know.
Yeah, I think I was very much hoping, especially considering it's like published by Adult Swim Games, which
Yeah.
don't make like they don't publish comedic games, but I tend to. It feels I think I was expecting it to have more of a kind of
They're kind of like
humorous angle.
off kilter games, but are generally well received.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah.
I actually don't keep track of them as a publisher much. The only other game I'm aware of that they published was Rain World, which is
Mm.
very much not funny. So I don't know, but it's yeah. I think I was expecting it to be more of a like having a joke gimmick that it like unexpectedly like executes well. You know,
Mm,
I
mm.
think I don't know. I was expecting a little more charm from it, and it's
Yeah.
like it's really not. That's not what the goal of the game is as like
Yeah.
a product. Like they weren't striving. The developer, I think Andrew Morrish, I don't know his name.
Moorish, yes.
Um, he wasn't like striving to make a game that was like really funny or really commenting on like the 90s perceptions of computers and the internet. Like it does that a little kind of quietly, but not really. That's not really the goal of it. It's kind of disappointing.
Yeah. I'd love to see like a second version of this, and it should
Yeah.
like have like it should literally be like how Windows 98 had Windows 98 Second Edition.
Oh yeah.
That should be the name for the sequel. Like, but it's like based on Windows 98 or Windows 2000 instead. I think that would be really funny how it like changes the aesthetics, or even like Windows
Yeah.
XP. Just like it moves forward a bit, but it actually fleshes out a lot more of the game.
I
That
think
would
XP
actually be
would
cool.
be a good one
Yeah.
because like that one's like I think just like pretty like similarly iconic. I think
Yes.
compared to 95. It's like
Yeah.
if you use XP, you know exactly what it looks like in your mind.
Yeah, and I think it
think
kind
that'd
of
be
hits the
cool.
right like nostalgia like time, because like Windows XP, what, 2001 I think it came out, so it's like the right level of nostalgia.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like I
Yeah.
actually, it feels very. I think I've used the term before, but it feels like a first draft of a game.
Yeah.
Like it feels like they set out to do what they did, but their original goal was very modest, very like kind of low stakes. So like I like to see it expanded into something more
Yeah.
comprehensive and memorable.
Yeah, I mean, reading your article, it seems like there was a solid idea at heart. It's just that the execution, I guess I think it definitely does come across as that proof of concept, and the Kingsway 2, or Kingsway whatever, Millennium Edition or whatever it's called.
Oh, that's great. I love that one.
Whatever it is, like that would actually be really cool. I'd love to see that. That'd be, or Kingsway 2000, like that would be a perfect. Like just
Yeah.
do that. But yeah, no, thanks, John. That was a lot of fun to read and edit. And folks at home, head over to the homepage doublejump.co, and you'll see it right there as you are listening to this. If you're listening to it, on the week that it comes out. But that's enough about what was on the site over the past week. Let's take it to the news. John, we kick things off with, I guess, what is becoming a staple part of, I guess, all gaming podcasts now, and the gaming news cycle, which is some more allegations of a toxic work culture or a very negative work environment, but this time coming out of a otherwise like kind of well received indie studio. Tell us about Moon Studio.
Yeah, we're opening up with the sadness section of the podcast.
Yep.
This one's like, anyway, we'll get into it. I'll just go over as much of the news as I can because there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
All this comes from a report from GamesBeat's Dean Takahashi. It's an expose of the studio Moon Studios. They're the ones who developed both Ori games in the Microsoft 12-ish series, Ori and the Blind Forest, and Ori and Will of the Wisps.
Wisps.
Which released quite... Wisps?
Yes.
Wasps. So the expose just kind of, it's very comprehensive. It's very long. There's a lot of quotes.
Very long.
Clearly had a lot of sources willing to say a lot. And I think Takahashi wanted to include a lot of those, what they said as well. So, but a lot of it kind of hits upon very, familiar themes to like other exposes, but a lot of it is just kind of so starkly in opposition to how they present, or how people perceive them as a studio just because of the games they release, which
Yes.
it reminded me a lot of well, I'll try not to talk too much, but it reminded me a lot of when we mentioned uh what's the Traveler's Tales games, like the Lego game studio,
Yes.
and how
Yes.
I personally found that like heartbreaking that they go into like such intense crunch, and it's just like this is so much worse than seemingly, where like maybe we'll hear something about them
Well, that's
eventually,
the
but
thing. Like with Traveler's Tales, like or TT Games, I think as it was known towards the end, um, like we kind of never questioned how the Lego games were coming out so quickly and on so many different
yeah,
properties and franchises. And I guess the answer was human suffering. That's
yes,
unfortunately that was the reason why. And I guess here, like there was no there's no shortage of descriptions of, really shitty like kind of behavior on the part of the two founders.
yeah, exactly. So as part of so from this expose with everyone that was spoken to, um, Moon Studios is claimed to be quote an oppressive place to work. Like that's kind of the word that's
Hmm.
focused on a lot. And this is solely focusing on the founders, Thomas Mahler and Gennady Coral. They're the two developers who's like founded and kind of continue to run the studio. Mahler is from Blizzard, and Coral has I think, like software technology background. But otherwise, they've been involved with the game, with the studio since the very beginning.
Hmm.
And when it was set up, it was the original goal of it was kind of unique, like not as unique today for obvious reasons. Moon Studios is set up with almost all employees being remote contractors rather than having an actual office to work in. And both the founders kind of tout this kind of flat structure and quote no bullshit attitude to how they run the studio. So the idea is to have, more horizontal, like lateral approach to how they build the studio and run it. That's according to this
Always,
expose.
yeah.
That's yeah. Apparently, according to
Hmm.
this has not been true ever. They've kind of exert control like over every aspect of production, which isn't, micromanaging isn't new, or it's not too surprising from game studios generally, especially small ones. And it's actually like probably the best thing. Like it's like the least problematic thing to come out of this expose. It's just that they're
Yeah.
extremely controlling.
The thing is, when it comes to flat, and I'm doing air quotes, flat hierarchies, basically what that means is the people at the top don't want anyone to feel like they're management. And so when what that flat hierarchy, this is at every this is at 99% of organizations, because basically they say, oh, we want to make sure everyone's got a say, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, there's always still someone you have to answer to, and if it's not structured out based on name badges or whatever, then it's basically everyone answers to you, the founders or the CEO, whoever it is, and that you don't have formal titles for people below you, but that kind of like those hierarchies eventually develop. You always look to people like who are more senior to you or who have more experience, and it sounds like here even the people who had more experience were not treated especially kindly by the
Yeah,
two founders.
yeah. Like a lot of it, we'll go into a lot of these quotes because there's a lot of them. But a lot of it just comes down to the founders basically wanted to say and act in a game studio exactly how they wanted, which is usually just saying a lot of racist, sexist jokes all the time
Mm-hmm.
that everyone has to hear. And that's like, that seems to like reading through the article, it's because it takes a while to get through. It's like, that's kind of the main point is that they just wanted to act how they wanted to, like 12-year-olds mainly, just saying whatever and
Yep.
kind of have everyone else deal with it
Yeah.
and maybe find people who are also like that, which it didn't sound like there are many just because there's
No.
such huge turnover.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and also to start with, kind of like an especially succinct quote in the article, just like summing it up very quickly. So, quote, from one developer, I mean, who worked there was, quote, extremely toxic, turnover is extremely high, remote work enabled people to be more toxic, end quote. That kind of summarizes a lot of it, but we'll get into it.
Mm.
Um, So first, offensive, racist, and sexist jokes were kind of the norm during meetings. There were extended screaming matches between Marla and Coral, and these apparently actually lasted hours. So they were just, everyone had to, the entire studio had to be witness to them screaming profanity and in like schoolyard insults at each other for hours. Um, and yeah, this is kind of normal. Um, Employees recall people being slammed as quote fucking idiots or quote failed abortions during meetings.
What the fuck? Like, come on.
Work, yeah, work would be dismissed as shit. A lot of it comes down to criticism being leveled in public. So, like someone, I think one of the former employees mentions, the classic normal management tactic is to kind of criticize in private and praise in public. Like that's how you normally do it. And they didn't do that ever. Like they
No.
just kind of criticized in public and then praised almost never, which is, again, sounds kind of minor, but it led to a lot of PTSD syndromes or like symptoms among the workforce at Moon. They also describe crunch as the worst in their careers, leading to 7-day work weeks that could stretch on for months.
That's yeah. Like, come on. Like, as a leadership team, you have a responsibility. Like we talk about this whenever it comes up with other companies, but it's like either you knew and you let it happen, in which case, you're shit people, or you didn't know and it was happening, but you had no idea, in which case you're incompetent. Like in either case, you don't come across as being a good leader or anything like that. Like I just, yeah. Anyway, it becomes very clear in the article.
Yeah. Yeah. There was one mention of during development of their current game. This is the one that is being developed by private division and not Microsoft, which we'll get into in a bit. He had the founder, Thomas Mahler. He had one run-in with the team members where he was wanting the main character of the story to suffer from rape, like to be raped or to have their loved one. Yeah. And so there was a former developer saying, quote, if Thomas said he wanted something, it would take like half the team to band together and persuade him not to do it. And what they didn't want him to do was a rape scene. So it's
which is fair.
Same developer.
It's you don't need to go that far to tell a story, to create motivation for a character,
Yeah, but it's the same developer said, there's no real incident that just jumps out as being truly terrible. It's just like this kind of stuff happening on a daily basis. I would say it's a death by 1,000 cuts. So, yeah.
Instead of getting like, what was it? Chopped by an axe.
Yeah.
I think that was the end of that quote, which, that seems like it was months and maybe years of just like being chipped away at, like your soul being chipped away at and just being broken down.
Yeah. Like, I think like the idea that one of the founders offering and then like really stubbornly sticking by the idea of having rape featured in a video game, in their video game, and saying that's one of potentially thousands of things to deal with every other day is like, that's horrible sounding. Like that sounds so like exhausting at minimum.
Because I think like even Hotline Miami 2 had a similar scene, and like there was a lot of backlash with that, and in the end this is why I cancelled my I had a pre-order of it, and I think I also had there was like a special edition Hotline Miami statue of Jacket, the main character from the first game, and I'm like, okay, if you 100% get behind something and you really believe that it's needed, it's like I can understand that and sticking to your guns, but then basically they made that scene optional because they're like, oh, you don't really need it. It's like, then why was it even in the game? And then that pissed me off. I was like, why were you fighting so hard to put something in the game that wasn't necessary? You just wanted the shock value of it, or to potentially upset people or get the headlines. So I canceled my pre-order, and I was just like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this shit.
Yeah. Well, in that case, I kind of wonder if it was more for the sake of trigger warning or like not triggering people. have that. Anyway,
Maybe.
that's a different.
Anyway.
But yeah, I don't want to try and defend something because I just don't know the context around that though.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's my fault. The women developers at Moon mentioned that sexism was common in the studio, especially from Marlo, apparently. They, quote, would have to endure a lot of sexist jokes, and it wasn't surprising to see the women leave after short stints in the company. And in general, they were extremely unprofessional in almost any aspect of work. They were controlling and involved in the whole development, but at the same time, they weren't held accountable for their actions. Yeah, so
kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, it's like the founders wanted to make something in place that's like kind of utopian as a development kind of outfit. Like they wanted to make games that were like where freedom and was encouraged and everyone could speak their mind, except it's only really they can speak their mind and only they can really control anything.
It's like we want a place where you don't have to abide by the law. Oh, by the way, we're above, but there are still laws there, but it only applies to you, not us.
Yeah, and it's like, and what they're saying is horrible. It's not just the fact that they're trying to be controlling; it's just that they're trying to like, well, the word is used is oppress. And it's like, but it's kind of employees are being forced to be inundated with all this horrible stuff they're saying all the time, usually by text threads.
Which like I don't know, like when someone says, "Oh, we're going to create an environment where you can say whatever you want, none of this political correctness, you can be who you are, and no one can take offense," blah blah blah. It's like that's just like sometimes that's just an excuse to just be a shitty person and say racist, sexist, offensive things and not feel like you have any consequences. Like it seems like the whole idea behind that Trump like social media network that never took off or whatever.
Yeah, it's been like 3 of those. The latest one's won by Trump there, and it just failed again.
Exactly.
John.
But
it's like they all want their echo chambers.
Yes, exactly.
Never really
exactly.
Wanting they want, like turning out the way they want it to, and it's just. It's always the same story.
We've got Scavenger in the chat. Hey Scavenger, long time no see. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching. He's Scavenger's made an excellent point, saying it's such a disappointing story to hear a studio that made such great games in the Ori games has this underlying issue of the studio execs being not nice people, and like we talk about all the time. Culture starts from the top. Like it's crazy, like hearing about the fact that the two founders, even to each other, were saying horrible, mean things, and just like sometimes their meetings would just be an hour of them yelling at each other, and everyone else is forced to watch and listen. It's crazy.
It's like it's also mentioned that it's like it's a good point, and that's like something that stood out right away. Is just like it's so opposite to the games they make. And it's just like it kind of reminds you of like John Lasseter in Pixar. He had like being a sex pest in the company.
Oh, really?
Like original, I think it was Lasseter.
Oh no!
And it's just like, what are with these places that make like childhood like such like nostalgic, powerful products that like really like kind of deeply touch so many people, and then it's just like, oh, okay, someone, or like it was somehow spurred on or like actually created by these like awful minds. It's disappointing at the very least.
Oh wow, you're right. John Lasseter had like sexual harassment claims against him and stuff. Alleged. Wow, this is going back to like 2017. Like some of these stories. Oh, that's why he left. Whoa. Anyway, sorry. That's I didn't know about this. Oh god, I feel really embarrassed. That's really. Yeah, that's bad.
It was a while ago. I think I was only reminded of it recently.
And I guess I'd never heard about it. It wasn't spoken about widely. I guess in the gaming circles that I'm, I guess I'm in that bubble.
I feel like it kind of happened around the same time as Weinstein and a couple others. So I think his kind of stuff got buried a bit.
Gotcha. Wow.
Apparently this culture was known by Microsoft as well. So that seems to have led to them severing their relationship with Moon Studios.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Industry insider Jeff Grubb said this on a recent podcast he was guested on, where he said Microsoft is well aware of what this company is like. I was told this explicitly this morning. This is a few days ago.
Mm.
And Microsoft was aware, and everyone understood that that's what this company is like. And then this was corroborated by Windows Central's Jez Corden, who said, I was told Moon founders resorted to personal attacks / bullying towards Xbox's teams and burned all bridges. So it's yeah, so it definitely seems to extend outward into their like wider network of developers, not just inside.
Mm.
So it's kind of hard to imagine this getting much better, honestly.
Yeah.
So
Oh, man.
hopefully there's some sort of, positive resolution to it. But it's
yeah.
these kind of situations always touch you with, man children running a full business and having complete ownership of it.
Yeah, especially because like towards the end of the article, Dean Takahashi, the author, talks about how both the founders held like a voice meeting addressing the article and that it's going to come out, and they're basically like getting ahead saying, why would you betray us? We're going to go through all this flack. It's disappointing to see our names being dragged through the mud after this amazing studio, all this work you've created. Why would you sour that? We've created this anonymous feedback system and stuff. It's like, oh, come on. That's the, like, you're just being babies here. Like, that's just so unprofessional.
Yeah, it's...
At least say no comment. I'd appreciate that better.
Yeah, they actually responded, like both founders actually responded with a long kind of statement in response to this article, which I haven't got the whole thing up, but I kind of saved one little bit, one little gem that is kind of says a lot. It says, quote, finally, we appreciate the irony that we, an Austrian and an Israeli Jew, started this multicultural enterprise. We view each other as brothers, and like brothers, we sometimes argue and frequently tease each other. We have made jokes at our own expense about differences in our backgrounds, and there may have been times that our teasing of each other has come off as insensitive and may have made others feel uncomfortable. So this is like, the article makes mention of a few like actual anti-Semitic jokes, like seemingly targeted at one who isn't Coral. But yeah, a lot of it's the fact that that's part of the defense is kind of astounding because it doesn't help.
It's not much of a defense.
No.
Yeah, like just because you feel comfortable, like it. That's the thing. Like working in now that we've both worked in teams before, right? I mean, we work in a team right now at Doublejump. Like we all volunteers, we all talk to each other, and it's like just because, say if you and I have some connection to Fiji, right? But that doesn't mean everyone else does. Or that other people who identify as Fijian or who come from Fiji and stuff would appreciate the jokes we make. Like, you have to kind of know your audience and, like, there's some things you keep in private as, like, in jokes between yourselves because you're both Jewish. But, like, you might have other Jewish friends who are, like, find it funny, but then everyone else just finds it really uncomfortable because they don't know the full context. They don't know if, like... it's just going to make them feel uncomfortable. And I wanted to add, like, Scavenger adds that I guess that explains the Ori story basically bookending at the end of Will of the Wisps. There was never going to be another game with this news. So I guess it was...
Oh, okay.
I mean, I haven't played the games yet. I'm looking forward to it, but yeah, maybe knowing this relationship with Microsoft was coming to an end. And it sounds like the two founders weren't happy with Microsoft either. Maybe informed, like the direction for the game.
I'm kind of curious to see. I mean, I don't think I really care too much. It's just like a lot of this says enough about how they operate, but I'm curious why they would be upset with Xbox when they're the ones consistently allowing delays and stuff like that.
I have a question.
Know what they were upset about. Yep.
I have a question. So, after Microsoft's kind of like very soft response to the Activision Blizzard allegations, and especially after now that we know that Microsoft bloody bought the company, and now knowing that Microsoft's been aware of what's been happening at Moon Studios, as well as some of the other, kind of history of Microsoft and like sexism and things like that, why is Microsoft getting away with so much now? Like, I honestly don't understand why.
Well, in this case, like the article goes into it a bit where it mentions how Microsoft, I don't think it had like a full awareness, and because of the way that it was like Moon Studios is structured, where it's like almost purely remote based, like there's no like central office to go visit, and because it's all remote, the founders, especially Marla, from the sounds of it, or like very like kind of in front, like standing in front of the entire team whenever there was any like discussion between Microsoft and the studio itself.
Yeah,
So I think that was like, not to, I don't know, I'm not really sure exactly what Microsoft can do when there are, other than just eliminating their partnership, because when they don't
got you.
have, because I'm kind of curious what that would involve if they were like okay with exposing another company's kind of
Yeah,
dirty laundry. Like I think that kind
yeah,
of, there's probably a lot going on there, but
yeah,
I know I'm not really happy with it either way. They seem to be getting,
yeah.
they you know,
Same with
it's kind of,
Sony.
yeah, it reminds me of Sony
Yeah,
and Quantic Dream, where it's
yeah,
like I'm sure they were pretty aware of how they were running for a long time,
yeah.
and then they kind of just quietly
And crunch at like
kind of
Naughty
just cut
Dog,
it.
Insomnia. You know, like we heard those allegations as well. And then last week we talked about, I guess, the 8 women that came forward in the wake of the sexual allegation scandal at PlayStation and Sony Interactive Entertainment.
In that case,
Yeah.
that kind of explains, them being okay with because Insomniac's had a couple like quickly forgotten allegation
Scandals,
of
yeah.
sexism at the workplace.
Yeah,
In that case, it kind of makes sense. They wouldn't
yeah.
feel like having to do much.
But I feel
now
like
that
they
they're
haven't
Insomniac.
copped nearly as much as like what Activision Blizzard and Ubisoft and Quantic Dream directly faced,
Yeah,
which is crazy. Well, that's the thing. Scavenger says, I guess like when I asked, why they're not copying it as much, why are we giving them a pass, and it seems like Scavenger adds, money talks. They all have enough money to sweep this stuff under the rug, keep it as quiet as possible. Which,
yeah.
sad.
It's also kind of the nature of the industry today is like, one, it's kind of expected, so it's kind of hard to make noise about it, and two, it seems to be happening so often that it's becoming easier and easier to just wait it out.
Yeah,
Like Activision was probably harder to wait out because they were actually like being actually sued over it. So it kind of, it's kind of hard to just ignore it then.
yeah, yeah. I'm just, yeah, and I guess Sony's got the money and the clout to kind of, I guess, get people involved to stop things from ballooning out of control. Maybe Sony's a bit smarter, but I guess we'll talk about a little bit later about Sony and its own like internal workings. But yeah, I guess to close out the story, is there what's the main takeaway? What do you think developers can learn from this?
Well, I don't know. I think it's just like not to be. I think in this case, like some of the people interviewed mentioned how like they were speaking out because they wanted people to know what it was like working in studios. But also, I guess developers will be, if they become aware of this, it's like, one, probably don't work in studios, and two, maybe don't work at studios that are completely remote.
Yeah,
because they could like knowing that. I'm not sure if it's like it's a trait of the studio that seems to almost encourage this sort of practice. Not encourage, but it doesn't. It's even fewer barriers between like founders or just leaders in the company operating how they want.
And if
at the
there's that much
expense of
churn,
employees.
and if there's that much of a turnover of staff, like that probably says something. Like it's normal for developers to kind of scale down at the end of a project. People leave, go to another developer, start a new project, take a break, things like that. But when this many people, like from the numbers, it seems like whatever the credits are for a game, double it. That's how many people actually worked on the Ori games, just at Moon Studios, not including the partners, Microsoft and things like that. So I guess that's an alarm bell for any prospective, I guess, developers who want to apply, not just at Moon, but I guess in general. Like keep an eye on that stuff. You could be entering a situation that could make you worse off, not just financially, but also mentally, physically even, or like relationship wise with your family and friends. Yeah, like 7-day work weeks and for months on end. Like that's I can't picture any relationship outside of work sustaining that.
Yeah, it's like they're almost saying the exact opposite of what actually happens whenever they were trying to get people on board.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, there
Uh-oh.
was also another video continuing this sadness section.
Please.
For more indie developers. This comes from a video from People Make Games. They're kind of a Patreon-funded journalism outfit.
Yeah.
As I understand, I'm pretty sure that's what they are.
Yeah.
It covers 3 studios: Mountains, Fulbright, and Funimena. They're all studios that are publishing or have published games with Annapurna Interactive, the kind of smaller independent publishing house.
Like kind of critically, like critically.
They're almost like an art house publisher. Like they've published very
Yeah.
small games.
Yes.
Designed to get like critical acclaim, So in this case, it like mostly focuses on both the studio's failings, like the leaders within it, as well as Annapurna's failings as a publisher to kind of help any of it from like or prevent any of it. So first is Mountains. They're an Australian studio. I'm not sure exactly where they're based. I think they're currently based in Adelaide. They released the game Florence several years ago. So one staff member at Mountains says they described the studio boss Ken Wong as, quote, a very cruel person in a position of power who liked to make people feel bad to make himself feel better.
Sounds familiar.
So, yes, it does. This is all reported on. This is kind of all summarized by Eurogamer. It's kind of what I'm pulling these quotes from. A number of resignations from the studio called the Annapurna's Eye as was happening. All 7 remaining, and when this happened, all 7 remaining members at Mountains voted unanimously for Wong to step down from leadership. But Annapurna wasn't actually able to accomplish this, and they ended up kind of responding very dismissively to Mountain staff, like following this vote that they actually couldn't instigate. So as far as I know, Wong is still there, even though the entire studio voted for him to leave. And then
that's
that's
not a good sign.
Yeah, so a lot of that comes down to studios in a frustrating position, and Annapurna did basically nothing to help. That's kind of a theme throughout these like small stories. Second was Fulbright, developer of Gone Home, Tacoma, and Open Roads, which I think is set to come out this year.
Yeah.
If all things
famously founded by Steve Gaynor, who last year stepped down after allegations from him about him.
Yeah, like specifically how he treated employees and specifically how he treated women. So this kind of expands this. People Make Games kind of expanded on this by explaining that Annapurna was actually asked by employees to step into this kind of situation with Gaynor. But, quote, Annapurna's focus was on the state of the game more than the health of the studio. So, and when Gaynor actually did step down, like immediately in response, because they were aware of the Polygon article because they were contacted. So when the Polygon article exposing all this went up, Gaynor pretty much immediately stepped down, like it was, coordinated. So, and apparently Annapurna was like not part of this. Like they had no support from Annapurna as part of this like event. And lastly is Funimena.
Is it Phenomena? Is it meant to be like Phenomena?
Oh.
Maybe that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
I think
Phenomena,
so.
right. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Now that I read it, yeah. I don't know why I was overthinking it. I was trying to think of like, was it like... Yeah, anyway. Sorry.
Yeah. I now feel like less of an idiot, so it's good. Phenomena is run by Robin Huenick. They created Wattam, which I think released a couple years ago now.
Yeah.
And they've released
people
a couple
liked
other
it.
games as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was excited to play it because I think it involves the what's that studio called? The creator of Katamari. I think they're involved with that one. Or is that another game?
Oh, like the same people behind Nobi Boy.
Yeah, I think so. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So apparently Huenick, like the studio boss.
Yeah,
He was
Keita Takahashi is the kind of the
okay.
famous creator of those the Katamari series. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think he was involved with a lot of them.
Yes.
But
Yes, he was.
yeah, it's irrelevant to the story though. I shouldn't have brought it up. Hunick was apparently emotionally abusive, used sensitive personal information to humiliate
That's fucked up.
employees. Yeah,
Yeah.
and some of this private information was actually shared with people outside of Phenomena as well. So Annapurna was aware of these issues. Annapurna didn't really respond
Mm.
to studio, like the rest of the studio actually wanting some assistance with it, wanting like mediation is the term wanted, like the term used. Yeah, and People Make
Yeah.
Games apparently contacted a group of current and former employees at Phenomena, and they said that Hunick is, quote, the instigator of a huge amount of toxicity at the studio. So,
Put that
yeah,
on your
so I guess
LinkedIn
it's just,
bio.
yeah,
Fuck.
it's
Jesus Christ. I just like this is like remember we talked about Team 17 a couple of weeks ago, how the like I guess like one of the long-term staff there and the manager there like kind of I guess like profiting off the studio and like paying people less and less but still making a lot of money. And like
yeah,
it's like you don't have to be a straight white male as kind of like the the stereotype. Like you can be from a different group, a minority, and still be an asshole, and it's just a shitty person,
yeah,
allegedly.
yeah. It's always disappointing because hearing about Fulbright and Gaynor, like is that was already disappointing. Like it's really disappointing hearing it from independent gamers, like studios, because you always associate it with corporate situations and settings
Mm.
that kind of lead these sort of blind spots, or even like outright encouraged kind of cultures.
Yeah.
And it makes perfect sense that like these kind of studios are also susceptible to it, but it's still like really painful to hear, especially in like we don't have too many studios in Australia yet.
No.
They're all small. They're all like small indie things, and it's like damn, like one of ours as well. I mean, to be fair, it was one person seemingly, but it's still
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Like just to kind of like repeat what I was saying about like the Lego Studio and
Yeah. No
Quarry.
one's
It's just kind of
immune.
exactly where you don't want it and expect it.
I
And it's
know.
just like
That's when it
heartbreaking,
strikes.
and it's yeah,
Yeah, and Scavenger adds the high turnover of staff even affects somewhere like 343 Industries, where I think just this past week, people noticed a lot of high level departures from the studio, and even like the roadmap being delayed again, or like not even getting updates. And Xbox's Matt Booty came out and said, like kind of came out defending what's been happening, saying it's kind of expected after such a major project like Halo Infinite launches that people would leave, and that he, obviously, confident in the team that's remaining there and the expertise, and also, I mean, tangentially related, talking about Microsoft Studios. I mean, the initiative, which is the developer that was set up to take the lead on the Perfect Dark remake that was teased last, not E, it was E3 or whatever. It was the Summer Games Live, one of those things. Whatever E3 was last year, and how I guess Crystal Dynamics, the developer of Tomb Raider, and what was it, the Avengers game from a couple of years ago, came on, like was kind of brought on as a co-developer, and then there were a lot of departures from the initiative at that time. Seems like more than half of the senior like designers, producers have left. But again, it's one of those things like, we're confident that the people that are there are still committed to the vision, that it's not going to affect the quality. It's like, I don't know, man. No one's immune.
yeah.
No one's
It's
immune.
like the initiative was a big one because I think Video Game Chronicles kind of had they organized a list of like everyone they were aware of had left within the last like year or two. That's like a significant chunk of the studio. Like, I mean, as of people are aware of it, and like a lot of it comes down to seemingly trying to build a like very, very large studio from scratch,
Yeah.
with a lot of people who have very different visions for what that means and for what do they want from the game as well.
Mm.
But it's just like that one, I don't know. It's hard to imagine. Like, that seems like a lot of turnover. Like, I don't want to put too much focus on it because I'm sure every game studio goes through a lot, regardless of what they want, except for like a handful that are really just very secure.
Yeah.
Like when they're operating at scale, I think there's a lot of turnover, but it's still that was surprising just how many people are leaving, and like in high level positions as well, which are like very hard to fill right now.
Yeah, like I've got the list up now, and it's like you can see like more than half. Like there's like less than 50% of the people who were there like even a year ago are gone. But I mean, they've been replaced by people, especially coming from Crystal Dynamics, working on other Microsoft studios. The Forza Horizon series, the Coalition, which looks after Gears of War, other I guess shooter alumni from Infinity Ward, Naughty Dog and things like that. So it's not to say that there aren't capable people on the team now. It's just it's worrying when you see such a high level of turnover. And we've got a scavenger ads. And it's difficult for anyone coming in to pick up someone else's vision and trying to make it work when it's so far down the pipeline while still having their own ideas to bring to the plate. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Like, especially when you're coming into a game that's already been there, like being developed for maybe a couple of years. You have no ownership over the vision. The people who the vision belonged to have since left, and now you're expected to give it, to start where they left off. And then work to all the same deadlines and everything.
Yeah, it's hard to, I don't know, like without actually being a developer, it's kind of hard to gauge quite how difficult really. But it's like, it's easy to imagine just how tough that must be, especially for like such a huge production where there's so many ongoing like moving parts all moving together. It's just.
And then see, that's Scavenger added. That's how we end up with cut content and half-baked games. Yeah, I can definitely see that being a thing. Especially with like Battlefield 2042, like it seems like there were a lot of ideas from a lot of different places, and maybe there was something similar here where the people who championed the ideas maybe left, people came in to kind of execute on those ideas and weren't able to do it in the time frame that they the deadlines had to meet. Who knows? Like I'm sure there'll be like a Kotaku or something breakdown, like a Jason Schreier Bloomberg post about post-mortem on Battlefield 2042 like there was with previous EA games. But let's maybe let's move on from some of the negative news and talk about something a bit more positive, sort of.
Yeah,
I guess the next major story is not the announcement, but I guess the official gameplay reveal of Hogwarts Legacy, which is a third-person action game from Avalanche, the developers of the Mad Max game and Just Cause, also partnering with Portkey Games and Wizarding World, which is the company that holds, I guess, the official rights to Harry Potter, like the franchise. I think it's not being worked on by J.K. Rowling, but J.K. Rowling is making money off this, so take of that as you will. There is a lot of controversy around that, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, but the main thing of note is that it is set during the 1800s, so about 100 years before the Harry Potter books take place, and even before the horrible Fantastic Beasts like sequel takes place. I think that's like in the early 1900s, like the 1930s, like because it literally references the coming like of Hitler and World War II. I don't know if you've seen Fantastic Beasts, the second movie. The Crimes of Grindelwald.
I don't remember it very well. I haven't seen the second one, but
yeah. So that's basically the thing. Is like Johnny Depp's character is like, join me, we can prevent World War. And it's like, ooh, like anyway. So so this game takes place in the 1800s. You play as a new student at Hogwarts coming into their 5th year. So it's like you're basically playing like a grade 11 or a year 11 student, which is as anyone who's come into a school years after all your classmates have been together, like it is a very, I guess I had to. It is a very awkward time to join anything, but I guess maybe it's like to explain why all these people don't know who you are and you're introducing yourself, and like they can say, "Oh, hello, person. You are from this background. You must be new here." So it basically it's a third person action game similar to something like God of War. It's got a like I actually like the look of it. It reminds me a lot of Elden Ring, but like mixed out with Harry Potter, in that it's got kind of like a flat, like lighting profile and some nice colors, but it's not trying to be like ultra realistic or ultra cartoony. It's got like it's got a very nice look, and it does have a lot of the Harry Potter charm that people will be familiar with from the books and the movies. Instead of like, throwing the axe or having chains on your arms, you've got your wand. You cast spells, you duel, you fight monsters. Essentially, you can craft new potions that'll give you new abilities, sort of like the potions in The Witcher. Like, before you go into fights, you can give yourself different buffs and like, I guess different advantages. You can also do activities like, I guess grow plants that you can summon and use as like Final Fantasy style summons in battles. You can also do a lot of exploration around the Hogwarts grounds, and you actually learn how to fly on a broom, so you can actually travel around kind of the pseudo open world. It's cool because like there's a lot of like kind of secrets and exploring. A lot of what you'd expect from something that's set in Hogwarts, with all the magical corridors, magical paintings, the ghosts around everywhere, all the different characters. I mean, to a fault, because it also has kind of the premise of the game is that there's some sort of rebellion by the the goblins, who traditionally have been oppressed in this universe. Which this game, I'm not expecting this game to address or to provide any nuance to that. It just doesn't seem like that's the style of anything related to Harry Potter nowadays. And you also see like, house elves and, the elves still being treated like absolute crap. Basically, if you're short and aren't like good looking, you expect to be treated like shit and villainized. Like that's what I'm learning from like, I guess now that I'm older looking at Harry Potter. I don't know. It looks cool. There's a lot of exploration. There's a lot of like cool things to figure out, a lot of cool characters to work with, but I don't know. I'm worried that this is going to be more. I don't want to say this. I'm worried this is going to be more like an Anthem than something really fully featured or like interesting, like a God of War, or even like a Horizon. What do you think from what you've seen?
I'll start off by saying I like Rowling's like even being adjacent to the game kind of turns me off it entirely. Like I'm just not okay with it really at all. But I will say from watching the gameplay, it's like I think the one thing, like I actually liked how school centered it is. I wasn't really expecting that.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a lot of the game, it keeps talking about making up for lost time as a 5th-year student. It's just like, wow, this is a weird thing to care about in a big budget release. It's like it's caring about my studies. Which I love the idea of.
It's a Persona game.
I also say, it's like Persona, except that you're actually doing school stuff and you're not making many friends. But I will say the combat looks like, I mean, I'll say there are combat models or whatever you call them, where they look kind of worse from afar than they do in your hands, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But from this, it didn't look very fun to play to me at all. Like I felt it looked very like mashy and not particularly like engaging to me. Personally, I like the wand combat.
Yeah.
Like I thought it just didn't look very good. Personally.
Yeah. I first thought
mashy.
It was because like I first thought this was like a multiplayer game, like an online multiplayer specific game, and that explains why like like the Avengers game from a couple of years ago, and that's why it isn't like it's not polished. It's like, I guess because it's not designed around active combat and things like that. It's kind of like role playing based, where there's still dice rolls happening in the background. So you might have missed hits and things like that. But looking into it more, it's like, no, it's not like that at all. it's meant to feel like an action RPG action game, like a God of War or Bayonetta or something, but I don't see that can like the the kineticness. Like how should I put it? Like it doesn't have that level of polish. That's
Like
what
it
I
kind
mean.
of like lacks impact because like
Yes.
it's like you're doing like juggling mechanics like those games, except you're kind of shooting something at them that makes them float very kind of in a
Yeah.
really I don't know. For some reason, it's not very enticing to me, but maybe I'm just biased. But it's like they kind of end up floating in the air, kind of like flaccidly, like they're just kind of sitting there, and then then you're just kind of shooting like pointless,
Yeah.
energy bullets at them, and you kind of it looks like you're just doing that a lot. Like,
Oh, that's yes. So Polar Knights, welcome back, our Norwegian friend. Talking about not my cup of coffee, playing a kid playing with his wand. On point as usual, and that this might be fun for a 10-year-old. I don't know. I feel like even 10-year-olds now expect more from their games. Like, unless all they know is Roblox and like kind
it
of the
looks,
clunkiness of that. But even that, I feel like can be polished even better.
I don't know about the polish. Like, it looks nice enough. Like, it looks like it. I mean, from what they presented, it looks like they made what they set out to.
Mm,
Largely, I don't think there's like I think the combat is probably about as close as they could get with
that's
what
true.
they're designing to me.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't look like it's mechanically like exciting to me. Like in theory it may be, but it feels like you have to get more like kind of experimental and innovative, like inventive with something with Harry Potter, which I think is usually just shooting beams at each other like Dragon Ball sometimes. I don't know.
Maybe that's
A
the
lot of it
problem.
seems to be like a lot of it seems to be like counters to spells. I actually don't remember it very well.
Maybe
I
that's
just
the
know it's
problem.
not very like combat friendly.
Like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
maybe.
thinking. Is like because you're like disconnected. Like, there's projectiles, but you're not shooting. You're still interacting with other things, but it's like you're not touching anything. Like, there's not that sense of like action. Maybe that's just like maybe that's just
Well,
a flaw of like anything that's gonna work with spells or magic.
yeah, it looks like they're trying to like almost like impose exciting qualities of like a mainstream blockbuster game
Yeah.
onto it, but
Mm.
it's not really fitting together. I don't know. Maybe I'll have a different impression if I watched it again, but I
Yeah.
remember not being. I remember being largely impressed by how much cool stuff there was, because that is what I'm mainly like drawn to personally.
Yeah.
But the combat looked not like just looked weak personally, so I'm kind of curious how it turns out.
I mean,
Because it kind of reminded me like weirdly of like Guardians of the Galaxy, which like I think that game largely turned out good. But I remember when its gameplay was shown off, it looked very just like
bad.
yeah, like you're just kind
Boring.
of shooting pointless beams at them while your other guys do the work.
Yeah.
It felt a little like that, where it's just like it doesn't feel like you're like have much of a role in the action that's happening on the screen.
Especially when there's so much banter, there's so much like kind of like quipping and stuff happening, but like your character just seems like pew 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 pew.
Well, in this case, it doesn't even look
Yeah.
like there's much banter.
No.
Like I think your character does talk, so like which I was actually surprised by. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how it turns out.
And you get to like recruit different companions, and I think you do quests for them, and as they level up in your quote unquote friendship, they become like they'll go on adventures with you and help you out. So I wonder if there's like scope for co-op. That could be fun.
Yeah,
That
maybe.
maybe
I bet it'll
yeah.
be a little like Mass Effect, where it's just like
That's
you
what
have,
I'm
like,
thinking.
people to hang out and do quests with, and that's kind of the extent of it. Maybe they'll get involved in the end game in some way. I don't know.
Let's see.
I imagine it'll be kind of like sorry, but I bet it'll be kind of what's the word, like familiar from like a bunch of other games. Like I don't think it'll do much that will be like all that new.
Yeah. I guess Polar Knights adds, it is like watching girls at the beach. You can interact with them, but you can't play with them as you like. That's
Yeah.
that's I guess, but I guess you shouldn't be thinking about playing with them. Like that's probably a bit disconcerting. I would advise you not to think that way. Just don't look away. Just don't even think about it. Just be polite. And Scavenger adds, doesn't seem like my kind of game. Yeah, I guess I don't know, like it looks cool. Like I actually like the way it looks. And I think it has. I like how there's like cool particle effects and like there's like kind of. There's some nice lighting tricks in the fog and things like that, but it's not like it's gonna blow you away from like a graphical point of view. So I don't know. It's I don't know who it's for, besides people who like really like Harry Potter and probably maybe don't know about all the J.K. Rowling stuff.
I feel like it's someone who's played Uncharted before, or like buys the Sony games that come out every every year or so.
Yeah.
Like they've played those. They don't play too much else, but they've played those before, and they're seeing a Harry Potter version of those.
And they're like, woo!
Games.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's coming out holiday 2022, so end of this year, on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series consoles. No announcement of a Switch release, but given how, I guess, like, technically challenging it might be, I guess maybe don't expect a Switch release until much later, like something similar to what happened with the Witcher 3 when that came to Switch.
I think there's a better chance it gets a cloud version.
That's true,
which
actually.
We won't be able to play here, probably.
Probably. I don't know if that's such a good idea for Switch anyway, because like the Wi-Fi on the Switch is horrendous. Like compared the new Switch OLED has got like a USB-C, an Ethernet port. That would help, but yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to rely on that, especially for anything that requires any sort of like precise action. Like I can't imagine playing like a Bayonetta on cloud version or something like that. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
well, in more PlayStation news.
Yes, my friend. Tell us.
Okay.
We've got. Oh, sorry. No. My bad. I'm losing my thing. Losing my train of thought. Yes. So, the other news story is that PlayStation has bought another company, and that is Haven Studios. So Haven Studios was founded, I think, late 2020, and I guess it came to fame when Sony announced that it was partnering with the developer, I guess, this month last year. So Haven Studios was set up by Jade Raymond, who's most famously known as kind of the co-director, co-creator of the original Assassin's Creed game, as well as a game called I Am Alive on the PS3 360. She was also involved with, I think it was EA Motive at... the developer behind the new Dead Space remake. So she was involved there, kind of working on an unannounced project before she left. I think it was an unannounced Star Wars project before that potentially got shelved and then she moved on to something else. So it's like...
she was at Stadia for a second, right?
That's right. She was like the VP of like game development at Stadia and heading up everything there until Stadia basically shut down and imploded last year. But she left prior to that and started Haven. So essentially, a year on since PlayStation announced its partnership, Sony's head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Holst, formerly from Guerrilla Games, announced that the company has purchased Haven Studios and is including it as part of its PlayStation Studios company. So that includes Naughty Dog, I think Insomniac, Housemarque. It's different to the deal with Bungie, where Bungie, I believe, is not actually part of PlayStation Studios. It's its own separate arm that's kind of working with Sony and has access to all the resources. So essentially, the main thing to take from this is that Haven Studios already partnered with Sony on a new multiplayer game, and this seems to be, I guess, like to foster even more closer collaboration. I mean, like Herman Holst described the new game as a, quote, a modern multiplayer experience, and that we believe in their, quote, creative and technical expertise. And it's going to be a new original IP, so intellectual property, new franchise for PlayStation. At the bottom of the article, Jade Raymond also talked about the fact that yada yada, she's been super excited, and it's going to be, quote, a AAA multiplayer experience with a vision to build a systemic and evolving world focused on freedom, thrill, and playfulness that'll keep players entertained and engaged for years.
The
So,
buzzwords.
yes. So we already know that Bungie is going to assist PlayStation with live service games. So games with long-term appeal, online, like multiplayer based. This is pure speculation on my part. I see this as Haven Studios is making that game and Bungie is consulting and providing tech for that game. Because I think that's what I think. What do you think? And chat, what do you think?
I don't know. It feels like one of those. It feels so early that I kind of like it's. I can't really think of much beyond just going, oh, that's interesting. But like, I think a lot of it's like, I feel like there's some point where they were like interested enough in the IP to invest in it, and now they're at the point where they're willing to outright purchase it in case someone else buys it first, which has been happening a lot. So that I feel like that's probably the big one. But or two, they were just like actually confident enough in what Haven's making that they're willing to invest further into it.
Yeah.
To make sure it's like, really, especially, and you're right. Like now that they've got Bungie to like kind of potentially assist, especially like considering it's like a pretty new studio.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine is still, it's still running fine now, especially if they're willing to purchase it.
Yeah.
But it's, couldn't hurt having like an established studio help them along.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's, I guess it must suck being someone like Jade Raymond, who's like the last credits everyone refers to as like, oh, remember Assassin's Creed? Remember? And then no one references I Am Alive. I feel like I'm the only person who remembers that exists.
I think you are, because I don't remember it either. Oh, yeah. Is that like very grey one?
Yes, yes, that's the one where it's like a post-apocalypse, and you're like, I don't even actually know what the premise of the game is. I just remember it was called I Am Alive, and then it's a very grey-looking game, and it's a post-apocalyptic game. I remember a guy like climbing a wall. Exactly. Yes, pretty much. Yeah. I don't think it had a very long shelf life. But imagine being someone with that much like kind of pedigree, or like with that much like kind of talent or like leadership and experience, but then like the last like 2 projects you've been involved in have been like shuttered. Like I would hate that. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I got the I'm not sure if I read it from anywhere with like any actual knowledge of anything, but I remember reading comments saying that she was a studio builder, not necessarily one who runs them. I'm sure she's fine at running them. Yeah, she's apparently very good at building an entire studio from scratch effectively,
which is a skill set in and of itself.
Yeah, especially with the initiative. That seems like they could have used Raymond. Yeah.
So just looking at chat, we've got Polar Knight saying, "Is it a let's see, talking about, I guess, Harry Potter just before. Is it a good Aussie game? We need an Aussie game." I'm not sure if I could classify it as a good Aussie game. I mean, I guess an Aussie Hogwarts would be hilarious. Like, imagine meeting an Australian character in, like, Harry Potter. But I guess Australians in the 1800s would have been very indistinguishable from, like, British people. English. Unless you were, like, really working class. That's what I can think about. And then Scavenger, speaking about Sony, is Sony needed to start throwing some money around, but they don't have anywhere near the war chest that Microsoft has. And that's true. Like, think about it. Like, PlayStation and I guess Sony Pictures are basically keeping Sony afloat, whereas like Microsoft has a very healthy services and software and like, online business that keeps it kind of like, not like perpetually funded, but it's like there's always money coming in. And so you can take the risks and make the losses on Xbox and make it back in different ways. That's why you can see all those that's why Xbox Game Pass can be relatively affordable but still have a lot of included games and a lot of first day release, like Tunic, which is like kind of that indie darling game about the fox, the top-down Zelda was like kind of just surprise dropped on Game Pass last week. And it's like,
was it a surprise? I didn't know that.
I think it was as in people knew, it was coming out, but people didn't realize it was a Game Pass day and date. I think that was a surprise. So it got a full release, but it also came on Game Pass. So it's like, wow, like, yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
makes
So
sense.
it's like
yeah.
Microsoft has money to burn, but Sony has
Mm,
to be a bit more selective.
exactly,
So it's kind of like it's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah, like it's kind of interesting to see what kind of purchases they're making when they're not really able
yeah,
or willing to spend money on just. I mean, not in that Microsoft are just spending money on whatever,
hmm.
but compared to Sony, like Microsoft and Embracer and Tencent to a degree, even though they're not buying anything, they're just investing. But like,
yeah,
they're just kind of throwing money around in like a venture capitalist does. Just like, oh,
yes,
this might make money. Doesn't matter
yes.
if it doesn't.
And that's the thing, like that's why like Microsoft does this thing where it's like, oh, I'll get like a couple of months of Disney Plus for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members, and like I think until like last month, Microsoft was offering 75 days free Crunchyroll Premium for like
Oh yeah.
Game Pass Ultimate members, which I just missed out on because we'll talk about it a little bit later. But I've switched over to Crunchyroll. But yeah, like
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I'm positive. Always good to see like new studios come up and get funding and new games being launched. I guess like Destiny's kind of like Destiny. Like if you think about like a long term game with like a steady player base, like Destiny's probably one of the rare ones. Like besides something like a Warzone. Sorry, Call of Duty Warzone. Like besides battle royale games, like it's pretty much Destiny and maybe like Final Fantasy 14. But that's more like an MMO, which has traditionally always been like that. Like I'm just trying to think of a game that, like, can you think of a game that really has had legs like Destiny?
Well, I don't know. Destiny seems. I mean, you play it and I
Yeah,
don't, so maybe I'm wrong. But like, it seems harder to qualify it as like and where it. Because like Rainbow Six is another shooter that's doing well
that's
without
true.
being a
Yes,
battle royale and
yes,
stuff. Like, but it's like Destiny's also like it's operating like a MMO, except it doesn't have a subscription price and it
yeah,
releases less content than
yes,
a MMO typically does.
yeah,
So it's kind of like this weird. It's not even really a hybrid so much as it's like an alternate version of MMO and then an
hmm.
MMO.
Yeah,
I mean, in my mind, like just from what I
yeah.
know of it.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It's like the modern equivalent of like a WoW, or
Yeah,
maybe
it
like
wants
it.
more money.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
actually,
true.
maybe it doesn't. Actually, I think it costs less,
Yeah,
which probably is like overall than because like Final Fantasy 14 costs like $30 a month or something.
yeah,
It costs a fair bit.
yeah.
Like if you're spending a lot,
But it seems
playing
like,
a lot.
I mean, the fact that they have to buy like a new server farm every day probably makes sense why.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scavenger adds the fact that Microsoft was prepared to throw enough at Activision Blizzard to make Halo not Xbox's #1 FPS says a lot. I mean, I guess like yeah, if you interpret it that way, yeah, like imagine. I guess like maybe within the next couple of years, like Call of Duty is the Xbox's shooter, like franchise.
Yeah, it's yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like I think his story is like it's kind of familiar overall. It's like I think we've
Mm.
it is kind of interesting to see how Sony's going to move into that
Yeah.
sphere though,
Yeah.
because they're still making like Twisted Metal as well. I don't know why I thought of that, but like I was thinking they're moving towards like online centric games, which they
Yes.
typically don't make many of nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they expand
For
on that
sure.
goal over time.
For sure. Well, that's enough about PlayStation. Let's move over to some more serious things in the world, and I guess some other game developers getting behind the cause and supporting, the Ukraine fundraising effort. John, tell us.
Yes, there's been a few, I mean, among many, there's been a lot of companies and people giving money to the Ukraine humanitarian efforts to get people out and get people safe. But in gaming sphere, there's been a few, there's been at least 2 bundles that we're aware of, as well as one other situation that I'll mention. So first is the Ukraine Humble Bundle, which is operating is running until March 25. So you got a few days to buy it if you want it. I think it's like around $55 last I saw when I saw it
Yeah.
the other day. Costs a fair bit, but it includes 123 games. A lot of them are kind of high profile. A lot of them are like tabletop things as well,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like there's a big selection.
Is this the one on Humble or is this the one on Itch.io?
Humble.
Humble. Okay, cool. Because I'm
There's
gonna
more
look
on
that up
itch.
right now. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pull that up right now.
Yeah, so the Ukraine Humble Bundle has raised over 16 million Australian as of now, so it'll end with a bit more.
Mm.
All 16 million is being split between 4 charities. So this is Razom for Ukraine, International Rescue Committee, International Medical Corps, and Direct Relief.
Hmm.
Um,
Medical cause. Don't get that confused.
Cause,
Medical
right?
corps
Yeah.
is something a little bit different.
It's such a buried pronunciation from like
Yeah.
childhood. Always like it took a long time to
Yeah.
not. Yeah, and I still
Well,
forget.
just quickly, like some of the games that folks can get, include uh, Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, Max Payne 3, Sunset Overdrive, Fable Anniversary, Slay the Spire, The Long Dark. Like, there's quite a few games in here. Super Hot, Dear Esther. Yeah, like there's quite a lot here that even if like you just purely want to support the charities, like I'm sure you'll find something in here that you'd like to play as well, especially if you've got something like a Steam Deck, because some of this stuff like I think is also Steam codes, which is cool.
Hmm.
Anyway, sorry, John, please.
Yeah. The second bundle, the one held on itch.io, bundle for Ukraine. They offered. It's over now, sadly, but it ended on March 18. But it raised 8.6 million Australian. It offered 998 items. A lot of them was like tabletop stuff and just like it's a really cool selection of stuff. Actually, I don't know. It feels weird to try and like shill it when it's done, but yeah. So they raised 8.6 million. They split these proceeds 50-50 between International Medical Corps and Voices of Children. And then lastly, Epic Games and Xbox announced on March 20th, a couple of days ago, that they were donating all Fortnite proceeds to Ukrainian, humanitarian efforts till April 3rd. And as of yesterday, so after the day, they've already raised 36 million US or 48 million Australian.
Crazy.
Which is really awesome, actually.
Good on them.
Yeah, so this is being split between Direct Relief, United Nations Children's Fund, World Food Program, and UN Refugee Agency.
So now, kids, when you hound your parents for Fortnite V-Bucks, or like adults who like trying to justify the new dance or the new emotes, like think of it as supporting the Ukraine fundraising effort, I guess.
Yeah.
You can get away with it for the next week or so, all right? It's all good.
Yep. They spent $20 on a skin.
Yes. But yeah, John, I guess that's kind of like it's great to see like a positive use of these microtransactions. Like we don't really get to see too much
for
of
once.
that. Yeah, no, I'm super happy. I love to see what's going on here. I'm sure Bungie's done something similar as well. For the Ukraine relief. Yeah, I think there was like a thing where you get a free emblem. You can sign up for a free emblem that shows like it's got the Ukrainian colors. I've got it up on screen for folks at home who are listening. But essentially, it's a special emblem, like your banner that you see in multiplayer and against your character, supporting I guess like Razom, Sunflower for Peace, International Committee of the Red Cross, Direct Relief, International Rescue Committee. So, donations, like the Bungie Foundation is donating to Direct Relief and International Rescue Committee directly. And that's been doing, like Bungie's been doing a lot of things like towards causes over the years. And this is just the latest in that. So it's great to see like companies kind of, I guess, offering what players want, which is like cosmetics, and doing something in exchange that actually does make a difference, which is cool. Like we don't get to see that a lot. Like gaming gets a bad rap, and I think sometimes like we need to take a step back and realize no, we can also come together and do things that are really, really awesome as well, and we should appreciate that.
Yeah, it's very good to see it happening on such like a wide scale as well, because we only mentioned 3 of them.
Yes,
so definitely 4 now, but like it's doesn't always happen. And it's very like it's just kind of good to see.
Yeah. You're
for
very
such a
right.
big catastrophe.
Yeah, and I guess to talking about things that we should encourage. I'm very encouraged by Netflix's two new announcements. Number one, we've got the official trailer for Tekken Bloodline. It's a new anime series. It's got that cool like kind of art style where it's like 3D with like a cell shaded kind of, I don't know, a cell shaded like art style. Like whenever there's like kind of camera shifts and stuff, you can kind of see the 3D effect happening, which is kind of cool, similar to like something that you'd see in like the Guilty Gear games or other Arc System Works games. And the show is called Tekken Bloodline, and it's due later this year. It is due. I don't think there was an official release date. I don't think there was actually. But anyway, it's an anime series that it seems like it's set between the events of Tekken 2 and 3, where we see a very young Jin Kazama, who is the protagonist. Okay, Tekken's got a very complicated history. Essentially, what you need to know is that Jin comes from a very complicated bloodline. On his dad's side, he comes from the Mishima family that is like very hyper aggressive, very competitive. And then you've got the Kazama bloodline from his mother's side. She's very peaceful, but she also has something called the devil gene, which is kind of like it's in her bloodline where there's like literally inherited a demon that can overcome you and take you over. Like, it's
I really love
no
fighting game
opposite. The demon comes from the Mishima side because of Jin's grandma. But Jin's mum, who is also a skilled warrior in her own right and raised basically Jin by herself, is a peaceful person who's like got the counterpart to it. And essentially in Tekken, by the time Tekken 3 happens, Jin's mum has perished at the hands of Ogre, which is like this ancient god from like the Aztec times, like who's like basically just like a fighting god. Like think of like
I never actually understood what Ogre was because I've only played like some of the later ones, and I think the only one I played where he was in it was Tekken Tag 2.
Yeah.
He's just a dude in
like
it.
true
I don't
stuff,
really play these story modes like almost ever with Tekken in a long time. As like I remember seeing him, it's like I didn't know that's what his thing was. Like I thought he was just a guy.
Yeah, I'm a few years older than you, so Tekken 3 was the shit in arcades back in like 97, 98, and then like. Okay. It was like the game. Like Street Fighter was like, oh, that's 2D. Psh, who plays that? Now we're going to 3D, right? And Tekken 3, like coming to the PlayStation, was a huge thing. It was like, oh my god, this actually looks better than the arcade game. And Tekken 3 is like when the series really took off and went mainstream. And Jin Kazama was like Tekken 3 was like, oh, here's a new generation of fighters. You got Jin Kazama. You've got Hwarang. You've got like Zhao Yu. Oh god, I'm gonna butcher all their names. Anyway, but there's like a new generation of fighters, and like basically this series looks like, it's like following on from his mum's death, and so Jin goes to his paternal grandfather Heihachi Mishima. Everyone should know him. He's the guy with the crazy. Okay, he's one of the guys with the crazy hair that goes in all different angles, like his. And he's like super violent, and like Jin has gone to him to learn how to become a better fighter and learn the Mishima style of fighting so he can defeat Ogre and get revenge. And I guess like he's going to enter the King of the Iron Fist tournament and face off against Ogre, who's like kind of like the ultimate boss in Tekken 3. I mean, if this is consistent with what the game stories are, I think this is set during that timeline, and we'll kind of follow Jin as he becomes a deadly warrior. And it looks cool. Like I'm excited. I mean, maybe that you and I both were big fans of the Castlevania series on Netflix.
Yeah.
So like I am optimistic.
Yeah, it doesn't look bad at all. Like I feel like it looked better than Dragon's Dogma, or
I haven't seen that.
Whatever other. Because I watched like 4 episodes of that one, and it's not terrible. It's just very generic. So I'm kind of not convinced this one will have too much personality personally. Gotcha. But yeah, I don't know. Netflix already has Baki on it, so which is like kind of like like if we're talking about fighting gods and over the top characters like Tekken, pretty much. Like now that I'm like,
it's interesting seeing like you can kind of see like where JoJo, like watching more of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like you can kind of see where like kind of that like Dragon Ball, Fist of the North Side, and all this stuff, like they all kind of have that trope of like just ever ridiculous fighting gods, like basically inhuman people just like escalating their like powers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like Tekken's, I guess, like the fighting game version of that in terms of like, you know, like I think even Street Fighter doesn't get as crazy as what Tekken does. But anyway, we'll get to see a lot more about that. But in related news, Netflix has offered some more information about its upcoming Resident Evil live-action series. So it released a trio of teaser art images. One of them, I guess, has like kind of like bubbles of like blood, which is, I guess,
Spooky.
cool. Spooky. And then the other one, it's got a pill marked with the word joy, which seems like to be some sort of like drug that's administered by the Umbrella Corporation, which is the notoriously bad, like the evil corporation in the Resident Evil series. And then there's another image which has the release date, the official global release date of July 14, and like a vial of blood with apparently someone who's tested positive to the T virus, which you know, is kind of like the main virus that causes the zombie outbreaks across Resident Evil. Like for folks at home, essentially the history is that like in Africa there was like this cave where this type of like poisonous plant grew, and if you took the plant and you survived, you became like a crazy warrior. Basically in like the law, like the Umbrella Corporation was founded by these people who discovered that like they became like pharmaceutical like kind of like conglomerate or whatever, but they essentially traveled to Africa, found those plants, tried to mutate them and create like bio soldiers, and that's kind of like where the T virus and everything kind of mutated from, and then it just kind of escalates from there and gets crazier and crazier. It's like, yeah, if you're like me and just like end up watching lore videos on things that you haven't played or haven't seen yourself, like you'll just lose yourself in hours of stuff like that. So my favorite part of this is the fact that it's got Lance Reddick, who's
Did a lot.
yeah, like I love the fact that he's playing Albert Wesker, which is kind of a twist on the game. Twists on the game where Albert Wesker's traditionally been like their Aryan super soldier, like super blonde, blue eyes, pale skin, and everything. In the games, like he's basically like one of two twins who's been experimented on to become a super soldier. In this, according to the kind of the Netflix synopsis, in the year 2036, and this is a quote, 14 years after a deadly virus caused a global apocalypse, Jade Wesker fights for survival in a world overrun by the bloodthirsty, infected, and insane creatures. In this absolute carnage, Jade is haunted by her past in New Raccoon City, by her father's chilling connections to the Umbrella Corporation, but mostly by what happened to her sister Billy. So Jade and Billy are twins, born to Albert Wesker, who in the games like is not not shy, doesn't shy away from experimenting on friends and colleagues to see what he can create. And I guess in this story, it's kind of hinted at that this is the case here, where it's set between, previously been told, like announced that it's set between two timelines when both the twins are like teenagers, and like the present day when you know, one of the siblings is, I guess, trying to uncover what happened to Billy. It'll be cool, like it seems like it's a good idea. Like I don't know if you saw it, but like that most recent, like kind of like Resident Evil show.
Oh, show.
Yeah, the one that.
Oh, the 3D animated one?
Yes.
I haven't seen that one.
That okay. I
thought you were going to talk about the movie that came out
No,
last
we don't
year.
talk about that. That was apparently really shockingly bad. Apparently.
I liked it.
Did you watch it?
The ending was bad.
Okay,
But like,
okay.
I actually liked a lot
See,
of
that's
it.
the thing. I heard that like people who weren't into Resident Evil didn't like it, but people who are really into Resident Evil, maybe they got a lot more out of it because they could kind of connect the dots in the background.
A
maybe.
little bit,
Yeah,
because I knew what it was doing. It was like because to Welcome to Raccoon City basically like kind of compressed the
yeah.
first 3 games, or
That's
maybe just the
a
first two.
yeah. I think the first two.
It
Yeah,
has like a lot of imagery
yeah.
and set pieces from those games, and like pushing the game. And it's like it draws a lot from the remake of two, a lot like just kind of in terms of how it's like everything's depicted and like all these different sets that look exactly like how they do in the that game.
Mm. Resident Evil Infinite Darkness is the one that I'm thinking about. That's the show
Yeah.
that is set like after like Raccoon City, and it's got like Ada Wong, like rookie cop Leon S. Kennedy. As like he's like kind of like it's been years after what's happened to Raccoon City. Leon and Claire like kind of roped into another outbreak, and yeah, and now like that White House has been attacked. It's like I watched like the
But, like,
first
those-
few episodes. Yeah,
Okay.
like yeah, like I'm not gonna say it's good. Like I found it endearing in a weird way, but yeah, I wouldn't say
seen-
it's anything special.
Have you seen all those other movies, like the 3D anime? Because I had the
I
impression
haven't,
it was connected
no,
to those, but I
no.
never actually double checked. Because all those ones I think are technically canon, and I figured this was like a TV version.
That's true.
Of that.
Yes, I mean, it references Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 4. Like Leon has already saved the president's daughter and stuff. Like he's already like kind of like well known, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize it's only 4 episodes. I thought it was a bit longer than that. Maybe I'll finish it off because like why not? Like
Yeah.
at this stage, what is time? But yeah, I'm
Gee.
really excited about that. I'll put it that way. Like I'm cautiously optimistic. It's being written by a guy named Andrew Dabb, who's written episodes of Supernatural, the TV show.
Okay.
So there's some pedigree there. We'll fingers crossed. Like July's not that far away. We've got Moon Knight coming up. We've got other Marvel shows. Like we've got something to bide our time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess
Yes,
yeah, that's something to leave it to. I guess
Really?
it's a
Yeah,
positive note,
right.
maybe.
Yeah, I was really. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I zoned out a bit. I am really interested in this series, and like, it's really weird at how it seems to have. It's such a out of left field sort of adaptation, where it seems to take like a few bits and pieces, but completely make them different. So I'm kind of confused why it exists. Because I'm not against adaptations that take like really weird turns on stuff that already exists. Like I don't want like I'm cool with new stories, but this one's I don't know. They made the movie that was like kind of directly an adaptation of the games.
Yeah.
And they have like they had that animated series you watched. They had the old movies that were like completely different. It's like I don't know what they're doing with this one. It's like
That's true. That's true. Just quickly in chat, Scavenger added when we were talking about the Microsoft kind of acquisition news, I'd be all for Sledgehammer Games, so the developers of Call of Duty World War II and I guess I think it was Infinite Warfare. I know there was Advanced Warfare as well. I'd be all for Sledgehammer Games making an ODST sequel though. So Halo 3 ODST was like kind of like a standalone spin-off of Halo 3, but it was actually based around the events of Halo 2, like from the perspective of the ODST soldiers on the ground. Essentially, ODSTs were like, they're still kind of like super soldiers in a way, but they're a lot more closer to like normal humans. They don't have all the augmentations and the special suits as like a full-on Spartan has. So you're very much vulnerable, and it was a very different take on Halo. It was like it had like a jazz soundtrack. It was set during nighttime in New Mombasa. Like you basically had a lot of stealth gameplay, and you're basically putting together like the events of the night before from the different perspectives of the different players, of the different people in your team. So it was a very different
I guess like
take on
Advanced
Halo.
Warfare might have had vibes of ODST a little bit.
Yeah, like I mean, there's definitely pedigree there. I could definitely see that working. So yeah, that's definitely a good call there. Yes, they're like the SAS. That's true. That yes, quite literally, because the SAS I think started as like special like aerial service. Like they were basically like they came from like the paratroopers in World War II from like the British military. So, yeah. Anyway, that's gonna do it for the news section for this part of the show. let's take it over to the general chit chat and some quick discussions about pop culture. So, John, you've been playing some Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah, it's I've been playing the original because I bought it like a few months ago on Switch, and we've been to play it for ages. Like especially because like the remake was a PS Plus game, and then it was like upgraded a few months back to like the PS5 version for free.
Yes.
So I hadn't played it yet because I wanted to play the PS5 version. They announced like at the same time. Like it's.
But this is
so,
the
like,
original.
I heard that it was like they took some. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
I was distracted by something. I was like, I wanted to play the original one because I heard that the remake sort of like tweaked some elements. Like it's kind of being.
It is a completely different game, completely different telling of events and stuff.
I thought there was like some similarities. Like I had the impression that the ending kind of set up a lot of like a splintering off.
Of the so think of a multiverse version of Final Fantasy VII. That is what remake is. Yeah,
so I had the impression that from what I've heard, which isn't much, but like from what I heard, remake is kind of a better game if you have like knowledge of the original.
Seems like it, yes.
Because it kind of so that's kind of why I wanted to play it, and also I don't know, I think I just wanted something turn-based, and ended up not actually being that. Which I was surprised by. It's actually a very different game than I expected because I didn't know much about it.
Have you?
For some reason, I watched like.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
No, I was going to say, like, does it have like kind of that active time battle system from like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy IV? Like that kind of. It's like kind of like there's some turn-based element to it, but you still have a timer where you have to get things done in your turn before the enemy attacks and stuff.
Yeah, like because the only Final Fantasy game I've played is 4, and it's been a long time, so I don't remember it very well. But I don't remember it being like this one where you have like everything's moving, like because I had it set to like wait in the settings. So like when you're navigating a menu in combat, time will stop and you have like a little free time. But otherwise in combat, everything is always in motion, and it's like it's not really much of a turn-based system. Like it's more like, I mean it is, but it's a very loose interpretation of the word turn. Kind of. It's like everyone else is on their own timer, and everything kind of keeps going regardless of what anyone's doing.
Yeah. So it is very much like an evolution of the active time battle. Like this is probably all old news to everyone at home, screaming at us because like it's Final Fantasy VII. How do you not know it? It's Robert Pattinson's favorite game, but we haven't played it.
Yeah, well, it's like one thing because I might write about it, but we'll see if I have time. But it's like one thing that really, just because I found it really interesting. Because like one thing that really kind of, because I'm like past the first section of the game and I'm into like the open worldy part.
Yes,
I'm at the Golden Saucer. If anyone listening knows it.
Was that the circus? Was
like
sort of like the arcade
casino
type thing? Yes. Okay. Cool. That's where all the like the mini games and stuff are, I think.
Yeah. I'm pretty much there right now. Oh no, I'm in the prison underneath it. That's right.
So you've beat the reactor. Like that's the first chapter, right? It's like where you fight the reactor. So all the Final Fantasy remake is basically the game until the end of the reactor. So
like it's always set in Midgar or whatever it's called, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. But
sorry, I've derailed you again.
Yeah, you have to be like sensitive with me. My mind just immediately goes off in some other direction if it's provoked. But yeah, so what really struck me early on was just how like cinematic it is. Like there's a big focus on imagery. It feels very, very ambitious for the time. And like the main takeaway I had was like, oh, I can see why people wanted a remake of this, because it's so striving to put images in your head at the best of its ability, like all these like painted backgrounds, all these like different camera angles using like the 3D graphics. So very new to the series. There's like all these different approaches to how it like presents the story and images of the game.
Yeah, and a lot of pre-rendered cutscenes of the time.
yeah, like there's all these different ways of like just yeah, like just all these different forms of presentation, and it's just like, oh, I can see it. Like so they're kind of like they're reaching so hard to make like to really make the images in their head appear in the game,
Yeah,
but because it's 1997, it doesn't really work.
yeah,
Like it looks great still for what it is,
yeah,
but it's so archaic and like it
yeah.
looks so primitive.
Like
And I
it's
kind of
like,
love it, but it's
yeah,
like obviously like you can, especially if you're a kid and you have like a real imagination for it, I can so easily see kids going like having like a very distinct image of what it's presenting,
to me
but
it
it's not
always,
getting that
yeah,
close.
it always looked like action figures.
Yeah, yeah, I can see
Like
that.
action figures playing against like a play set, like sort of like marionettes on a stage. Like there's like a static background and a lot of movement happening in the
Yeah.
foreground.
But it's just like it's not just that. It's like, you know, like you'll kind of you'll move into the next scene and it's like Cloud like crawling towards you, an event. And it's just like, whoa, this is weird. Like it's not like static, like top down or
Yeah,
anything. It's
yeah,
not keeping like the camera angles are always changing. There's like cut scenes with, you know, like yeah, like was it pre-rendered?
yeah. Pre-rendered
Yeah,
assets and stuff. Yeah,
yeah. And it's like
that's so cool.
it's just yeah, it's so much more ambitious than I thought, and it's like so far away from what they want to do.
Yeah,
It's like I yeah, like it's I love that they tried, and it clearly like worked for most people who played it. You
yeah.
know, like everyone who played it, you know, generally loves it or just feels like a strong attachment to it. And
Mm.
I can see why now because it's like reading a novel as a kid or just you know or any age really, but especially when you're like you don't when you know there's like really formative books or something where it's like it's trying to you know kind of create images in your head that isn't really being presented like literally in front
Yeah,
of you,
because like,
and it's just,
yeah, yeah. I know. Sorry, I'm just. It's just blowing my mind that it's like this game's 25 years old, and
yes,
it's
it's very
like
hard.
how much things have changed since then. But like, I can only imagine like coming from like Final Fantasy VI, which was on the Super Nintendo, to this, that would have blown your mind back then.
Yeah, I know. It's like that's what I keep thinking about. It's like it's just like this is so gigantic for what it is, like for the time period. Like also that's another thing. This game is stupidly massive. There's like
Yeah,
so much like every time I keep looking up help for something little, like some little mechanic where I'm like not totally clear on what it does, it's like, oh okay, this is like an entirely different game. Like a entirely new game buried within it.
yeah,
It's like I tried looking up like chocobo betting because I was a
yeah,
little confused on how it works, and it's like, oh wait, you can like raise chocobos. It's like there's like this whole new system, and it like keeps happening.
yeah,
It's just it's like like I can understand why people because you know before the remake came out, people were like really what's the word, like they just didn't really think they would pull it off,
yeah,
and like, to an extent they didn't because they only did one part of the game, you know, because this game is like so big, and it's like doing it by like today's standards is like such a different task, like telling that kind of story
yeah,
because it's such a huge like it just has such a huge scale
yeah.
as a game.
That's the thing, and like, imagine trying to adapt that to 4K, high resolution, everything. Like, that's why you can kind of see why people questioned how this game would, how the remake would handle it. But I think it was very smart doing that, that alternate universe take. Because, sorry, it's a bit late over here. That like you can imagine that like you kind of had to, you know, the sheer amount of resources taken to kind of build out the assets in the world of the original game. Like, I think there's a lot of scope to it, and there's a lot to Final Fantasy VII. Like, we might look back and think of it like it looks kind of comical in a way, but like there is a lot to the game. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's just crazy. Like, I'm keen to hear more about your thoughts as it kind of develops as you play more of it. Do you think it holds up?
um I think so. I think the only thing about it is like I'm still not really into how active the combat system is. Like I was
Sure.
so on board for turn-based, and it's like it's
Yes.
just like I think they knew exactly what they were doing though, because it's like it's very forgiving so far.
Yes.
Like you don't have to try very hard to like beat anything.
Yeah.
Like it seems very it's so far it's been very easy in my experience, and there haven't been very like every time I look it up, it's like people talking about how it's like, oh, I do this and this in my run, and it's like it feels like it's the more you get to know it, it's more like asking you, how do you want to break this run, this playthrough? Like, do you want to do this and just destroy this element, or do you want to do this? Like, because otherwise, as far as I can tell, the base difficulty is very low. You kind of just do whatever you want. But I don't know. Like, I'm actually not sure. Like, that's just my impression.
No,
I gathering bits and pieces.
Like, for context, like my experience with JRPGs is pretty much just Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 13. They were the most like kind of like opposite sides of the spectrum, but. This is like the active time battle system, I think, was introduced in Final Fantasy IV and then evolved in Chrono Trigger. And then this is like another evolution of that. So it's like, think of this as like, revision 3 or whatever it was. So it definitely does, like when you first see it, you think, oh yeah, I've got all the time in the world to kind of think out my turn. But no. Like, there's always a timer. Like, if you take too long, like, the enemies are going to get to you. And you have to think about, okay, what's a quick move versus a long move and things like that.
Well, it's like what I pictured it was. Because, like, I played with Final Fantasy 4, I played the DS remake. That's the only one I have. Like, I don't know how many people have.
Yes,
like, people don't seem to like it that much. But I like how it looks and I liked how it played.
Which, that was especially difficult. I think it was tuned very I think the reason why people didn't like it is because it was tuned to be very difficult versus the original game.
Oh, okay.
So it was actually based on the PlayStation release, because the PlayStation release had like better music, had like full cutscenes and stuff like that. And so that was the one that was brought over to PlayStation. And I know from what I remember, it was notoriously a difficult game, a difficult version of the game on the DS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because the only thing I remember about it, like that I thought people were annoyed by, is because the character models don't have feet. They all have hooves.
Oh, what? That I don't know.
Actual hooves. They just don't have like feet modeled.
Oh, yeah. It just looks like a rounded off like doll feet or something. Okay, I get you.
I actually like how they looked a lot, but
like, at least I gave it a look. I remember watching my mate play Final Fantasy VII in like 2001. I was like, what the hell is this dumb game? This looks so stupid. Like, what is this flat 2D artwork that looks worse than Zelda? And then, like with the backgrounds, how like it just literally is like a picture that you like walk through, like some of the backgrounds. And like, I was like, the whole concept of like, wait, so you're on this like overworld, you're just one person, but then when you go into the game, suddenly 4 people appear. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like this dumb PlayStation game. I'm Nintendo. like that's how I was thinking back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, sorry. That's what I was going to get at. It's like my memories of 4, which might be completely off base, is that when it's active, everyone had their own little loading bars until they could have a turn.
Yeah.
And my memory of it is that once that load bar happened, that turn started, and now everyone else has to wait. I didn't like in 7. It doesn't work like that. It's like it loads up. They can start working on their turn, but everyone else's turns are
still happening. Yes.
Yeah. Like everyone else is moving, and it's just like, oh, I don't really. It's fine. It's like it's just very different from what.
It's like there's like a risk reward thing, where it's like, do I go for something that'll take longer to summon but can be devastating, and risk missing, or do I go for like quicker attacks? And buy time for my healer to heal my team. And
as far as I can tell, there isn't actually much like charging time from stuff. Actually,
okay.
A lot of it's just it does come down a bit to like how long a character can charge. But as far as I can tell, like they always seem to be pretty similar to one another.
Okay,
that's like
good.
A distinct difference. Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, hopefully next week we can get more. I want to know, like, once you played it a bit more, what you think about it. And maybe we'll see a rewind on this. It'll be cool to get that perspective. 25 years on.
But you have been playing JoJo.
Watching JoJo's. Yes, so I have been watching JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it is quite the bizarre adventure. I'm not gonna lie, it's interesting. I'm now up to, what is it? It's the second one. It's the one with Joseph. I'm not gonna do it again. I keep doing the accent. I don't know.
I'm not expecting you to.
If I offended anyone last week, but yeah, like it's the second arc, so I'm like partway through that, where it's like set 50 years after the events of of the first arc. So it's
Mm.
like it's following Joseph Joestar, who's the descendant of he's a descendant of
Jonathan.
Jonathan Joestar from the original, and he's like where Jonathan Joestar was all about being a gentleman, like a gentleman and a scholar, seeing the best in people. Like Joseph Joestar is like very like the opposite. He's very brash, quick to anger, a show off, a bit of a douche, but like still lovable in that kind of same Joestar way, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're an idiot, but we love you, and like Irina, who was like Jonathan's wife in the original series, now she's like a grandma, like she's his grandma. And I guess you're meant to assume that she was pregnant during the end of the original series, and that's why there's a Joestar line still continuing. And then Speedwagon, I guess the best friend of the original JoJo, he's still around. He's now an oil tycoon somehow.
Was he an oil tycoon?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's apparently how he made his money.
Right.
And now basically the main threat now is this people call the Pillar Men, who are like discovered among the Mayan ruins where the original stone masks that turned people into vampires were, and now there's actually more that were found in Europe. So it's like these are like kind of like these ancient warrior gods that fought against the Hamon clan, so the clan that the Joestar family, I guess, is kind of affiliated with and knows the techniques of. And it's like apparently it's called Hamon and also Ripple. Apparently,
Yeah, I
depending on
think
the
it depends on,
translation.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, speaking of that, the reason I've actually switched from watching it on Netflix to watching it on Crunchyroll, because the Netflix translation is actually not correct. It is actually just basically they took the dub, which was already kind of like Americanized and kind of like, I don't know, like simplified, and then it's basically just a transcription of that dub, not a
Okay.
translation of the original Japanese, so to speak. So that's why the things that they're yelling out don't match what the Japanese is, and you can there's some very clear like kind of English words that kind of come out and don't translate, and it's like it always irked me, and then I looked into it and I realized why. Because like I switched between English and Japanese, I was like, wait a minute, the subtitles match the English perfectly. This can't be right. And then I looked it up, and then it turns out Crunchyroll has got the proper translation, whereas Netflix apparently with all of its anime that it like licenses that isn't its own, it's got that like kind of, it's called a fan dub. It's called like I think it's called like dub sub or something like that, where it's not a real sub. It's not a real like translation. It's actually just the anglicized translation, and then just like written out under the Japanese with the Japanese voice acting. So I'm not sure which one you watched, but yeah.
I would have watched the one you're watching now, like the original one.
Yeah.
Because I didn't watch it on Netflix. But it makes me wonder if the newest part has that problem as well, considering you can only watch it on Netflix.
See, maybe with that it's different. Maybe with that, like because Netflix is doing it from the beginning, maybe it's got a better licensing, like a translation team. But who knows? Like, I hope that it's solved, because I don't know. Like, there's some anime that I can watch dubbed, like Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, like those anime, Wolf's Rain, like animes like that. I'm like, oh, I'd love it in English. Like the voice actors just, I hear them in English because they've got such iconic voices. But then there's some stuff like this where it's like, no, the Japanese, you need to listen to it in Japanese because it's so over the top. Like there's Japanese expressions, the way they speak and the way they carry themselves that doesn't translate.
Yeah, like I don't think I've heard the dubs for JoJo at all, but I can definitely agree with it with JoJo specifically. Like I'm cool with dubs generally, like at all, like completely. It's like they're not a problem, but it's like with JoJo, it's like, oh yeah, like that one is kind of a weird one to imagine in English.
And it's like, it's cool. Like he's like kind of like JoJo's like this lovable douchebag of a guy, and now he's like kind of learning to harness his Hamon powers alongside the grandson of Baron Zeppeli from the original series, who was like kind of the one who taught the original JoJo the art of the Hamon. So, and like apparently it gets even crazier from here, because like the Reddit for the JoJo series is called like Stardust Children, and I'm sure there's going to be some space shenanigans in there in future seasons. Or
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I'm excited. Like my
How
wife.
far are you through
Yeah,
it?
I'm like episode like 16 in like or
Oh, okay.
17 in
Little bit.
like basically I've just met a lady named Lisa,
Oh, okay.
who's
Yeah.
based and it continues the trend of like music themes. Like Lisa is based on
Yeah.
an artist called Lisa, and like her two sidekicks are like Mishin and Loggins, like Logs, which are basically like Messina and Loggins. Like that was a group back in the 70s.
Oh,
And
okay.
like the theme for like Hamon and like powering up is like Owner of a Lonely Heart by I think a band. I think it's by Yes. I'm not sure. It's
Oh, okay. Because I like, there's a
yeah.
lot of music references, but I actually haven't looked up a lot of them.
Yeah, so it's the song that goes did. It's like iconic 80s riff, and it just kind of like, I know it's set in the 30s, but it just works with the kind of the like JoJo basically looks like a rock and roll like dude. Like he's just
Yeah.
dressed up in like the weirdest weirder clothes that don't fit into the time period. And it's just like, he's
Yes. Yeah, that's actually worth pointing out. Like, as period pieces, they're
don't-
very bad at it.
No, like they're literally like he's wearing like bomber jackets and stuff like that wasn't popular until like after World War II, and like he's pretty much got like what maybe like through the like if you think about it through the lens of like a Japanese creator in the 70s or 80s who's like working on the manga, listening to a lot of rock and roll from America, imagining what America would have looked like through the movies they watched or like the music videos they saw. So it's kind of like it's definitely like, and like clearly there's like Nazis in here, but they're not Nazis, they're part of the Wehrmacht, but they've got the SS badge. Like it's just like,
Yeah, that part's
that doesn't
like
make sense.
a problem.
That's like
a little because I still don't. I feel like it's a bigger problem than I'm usually willing to say it is. Is the idea that one of the like comrades is like actually a Nazi and they never really interrogate it,
and like they actually are valiant. Like here,
Yeah,
like the guy Stromine or whatever his name was, Stromheim, was like, oh, he's actually a Nazi. He's part of the SS. And then he's like, oh, he's
really
a valiant,
dance around the idea.
like valiant hero who sacrifices himself. And then like, the motivation for like Zappelli and Joestar to fight is because they lost this Nazi who was going to get married. Like it's just like skirting around the issue that it's kind of like painting Nazis as like, oh, they were bad people, but they're still people. They still had families. They might have done wrong, but they knew they did wrong, and they knew they had to keep things. They had to protect the world. Like we should respect that. And I'm like, I'm not cool with that. Like that is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it's like it feels like it really tries
Dude.
to. Because I have read the manga, I think, but actually, no, I haven't. No, I've read like later parts, but like with the I don't know how the manga is, but the anime really dances around the idea that he's a Nazi. Like he always calls him a German soldier. I think that's usually how he's described. And like what he's it's like, so they constantly elevate the idea that he's a warrior, and they're always not trying as hard as they can not to really mention the idea that he's like historically relevant to Earth history.
They're doing it for the fatherland. They're not doing it for the Third Reich. And like they just skirt around the fact that like this very clearly takes place in the time when Italy has been like basically taken over by Germany. Or like it's like very like it was during the period of time when like Mussolini would have been like allied with Hitler and stuff. It's like it just kind of skirts around the fact that just kind of like the German presence in Italy is just, oh yeah, they just run this place and I'm friends with them. That's how we can get access to these like ancient artifacts. Like
and him and the Germans being in it is like it's completely drawing from the idea that like the Third Reich was like trying to find all these like
it's the Indiana Jones thing, right?
Sort of items. Like the Pillarman is like an example of that.
Yeah,
and they're still not really addressing it.
Yeah,
like it's a very old story technically. Like I think it's from the 80s.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's a while now.
Yeah, like and I guess like maybe Japan's view of Germany is a little bit different to ours, considering the fact that the alliances were very different. I'll put it lightly. But yeah, I guess yeah. Anyway, I'm enjoying my time with it so far. I'd love to talk about the Ms. Marvel trailer, but I think we're running pretty long already, and not really much to know about it, besides the fact that a high school girl of East Asian descent finds magical bangles in the attic and is now a Bollywood dancer / superhero, but is basically like Marvel's version of Green Lantern in that she can kind of like make things happen if she imagines it.
Yeah, they changed their powers a lot.
Yeah, because
So,
that's not what I thought she was in the comics, but clearly this is a different depiction.
Yeah, I saw one thing saying that, I saw a lot of people saying it's like it would have to be because of like how stretchy limbs look, because that's what our original powers is like. Luffy from One Piece or Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
Mr. Fantastic.
It's a fantastic.
One of those.
Yeah,
because hers is more. Yeah, like it's like
Mrs. Invincible. What was her name? Like the lady, like the mom in
Miss Invisible.
Whatever she was in the Invincibles. Yeah.
Oh, her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of changed their powers. I did see one theory though, like beyond just like 3G, not 3G, like 3D CGI.
Yeah.
That it was probably more to do with making her fit in better with Captain Marvel and the new one from WandaVision.
I don't even know her name. All I remember is like she's Monica or Maria Rambeau. Like she's Rambo. Yeah. She's the daughter.
But she's got like
powers now.
Name, but they never actually. I don't think they ever said it in the show. Or maybe they said it once.
Yeah, and she's got an outfit.
I just know she has another name. I don't know. So that's all I want to say. But like,
I don't get it. I don't get it.
And saying that like the reason they gave her like sparkly Green Lantern powers is to kind of fit in, like have like a more cosmic feel
entity,
and also I guess stronger powers, I guess, to kind of fit in with Captain Marvel and her, like when they do that movie.
And it's just like appropriate. She's of Indian or Pakistani descent. They find magical bangles. There's a scene of her like Bollywood dancing. Like it's just apparently just what, if you have a character from that background, you have to show them doing those things, wearing some sort of Eastern jewelry and dancing to Bollywood music.
Yeah, there's also a rumor that the villains are going to be like some like really kind of deep pull like C-list villain group that's they're like genies. So that's kind of interesting.
I'm just picturing her fighting the genie from the Disney Aladdin, like the Will Smith version.
That'd be something.
But I did get like a Life is Strange vibe from like the comic, like kind of the the colors and like kind of the outlines kind of floating around, and kind of like also like kind of the comic book aesthetic at the beginning, but that kind of like disappears throughout the second part of the trailer. Like kind of starts off really strongly with that vibe, and then it kind of just disappears and becomes just like another Marvel effects show. I don't know. Like I'm not holding out hopes for this.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting trailer. Yeah. Like it's just like, oh, sure, it'll be okay. Maybe, I don't know.
But yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Double Jump Radio. Thank you to everyone for joining us on such a long episode. But I think we had a lot to cover, so I'm not going to apologize, because we had a lot to cover. But as always, if you'd love to support us, you can do so by following us on Double Jump. All of our social media profiles are linked on our homepage. Double Jump Radio is made possible thanks to the support of our wonderful members and patrons. You too can support Double Jump by becoming a member by going to doublejump.co/memberships, or a patron at patreon.com/doublejump and signing up today. We're going to be updating the Patreon more regularly, and it's going to be, we've got some plans for what we want to do for memberships going forward. I can't talk to them right now, but it's some exciting news there. But yeah, John, thank you so much. Oh, my bad. I just realized that my keyboard shortcut for the outro music is also the keyboard shortcut for refresh. Oh, God. But yes, John, thank you so much again for joining me on this very special live recording. Thanks again, man. Always a pleasure.
No worries. Long time.
Well, until next time, everyone, look out for one another. Peace.